Okay, so welcome to our 7th module today on instructional design, paper 2. And I'm very happy to be here, looking forward to a very, very busy session because we've got a lot of content to cover, and I hope it will be clear, meaningful, and relevant to your learning as in the world of training and development. Today it's a lot about how do we organize our content and our matter when we are doing training. I always say, content is king. And trainers who are not comfortable with subject matter or not fully conversant with subject matter, uh, they tend to, flounder, and they tend to resort to too many games and too many interactive elements so that it detracts from the content. But the content is always primary. Whatever content you have to deliver is always the primary objective, and secondary is how do we make it interactive and engaging so that people actually learn and don't have to go only with cognitive mode. So to me, the content is always king, and I always say that. Otherwise, you make people feel good with a lot of, double two ways dialogue, but then at the end of the day, you've not really understood or not really absorbed any of the content that is supposed to be delivered. So training is about transferring something from the trainer into the minds of the learner, of the trainee. So it's about, somebody said last time very nicely, the head, the heart, and the hands, the cognitive, the psychomotor, and the affective. So it's about transferring all of that, not just knowledge, but also, skill as well as the belief. How do we inculcate all that in our training session? So that's what today's session is about. But before we begin, I'm sure everybody will be very keen to know what the outcome was of our little homework contest, I will say. We wanted to do some homework and the best team will win. I want to acknowledge the submissions that I got. Some came even as late last night, but at least you guys, put your heart and soul in it and sent it, even if it was past the deadline. So I'm acknowledging group number 1. The names are not available. Group number 4, group number 5, 6, and 8. There were a total of 10 groups. I really appreciate that you showed up and that you had your meeting, you formulated your objectives and sent them in. Really appreciate that. And the groups that did not make any submission, I will fully understand why you could not, but you need to ask yourself a question. What is it that came in the way of your submission, which was more important and to your own learning? So I will just ask you to stay with that question. But today we will have the best presentation coming from group number 2, which consists of Shobha Prasad, Sabir Kumar, Anthony Remigius, Ashik Hussain, Dr. Ashwini, Payal, Sanika, Dhanshri, Vijay Kumar, and Dr. Yashoda. I want to call one of the persons here to present. And I would like to call one of the persons here to present. Anyone, please raise your hand. Anyone from this group who is available? Please raise your hand.
Ma'am, good morning. I think Dr. Ashwini may be here. She is going to present.
She's going to present, and where is she? Can she raise her hand, Dr. Ashwini? Dr. Ashwini, can you raise your hand? Anybody else from this group?
Dr. Ashwini is here. Dr. Ashwini is here.
Dr. Ashwini, please turn on your camera. And Gurvinder, can I request you to allow her to share her screen? Would you like to share the screen, or should I share it on your behalf, your submission? Ashwini?
Ma'am, she has written that she is traveling right now and may not be able to talk. So I am going to present, ma'am.
Who's that? I cannot tell who's speaking.
Ashik is here. So I am turning on my camera.
Yes, please. So I'm going to You have exactly 3 minutes. I'm going to share on your behalf your submission. This is your submission.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, Ashik, please go ahead.
Yeah, ma'am, this was the assignment given to us, and we met together on the Zoom call once, and we discussed it together. And we followed the Bloom's taxonomy and applied the same here because we found that there is a, for example, Mr. Rajesh, for example, he was, for example, good, having the good technical aspect. He was good in technical aspect, but at the same time, he was feeling nervous. And he was also, for example, there were the need when it comes to presentation skills. So for example, since I have just 3 minutes, so I will straight away go to our submissions. So the first is Bloom's taxonomy says that there are, for example, lower learning, lower, for example, we have the lower learning needs, and then we can move from stepwise to the higher order, for example, over the ladder. So it starts with the remembering. In the remembering phase, we have to make our, for example, this training program in such a way that the people who are attending this program, including Mr. Rajesh, they should be able to remember the important aspects of the presentation skills. Then they should be able to understand the things that which are explain the ideas, the concepts, and then that has to be followed by the application. Okay, they should be, the team should be able to apply the facts. They should be ready to, for example, for example, during the presentation, they need to practice, and they need to, for example, here in the understanding phase, as it is showing here, the team has to, for example, describe how presentation structure influences audience's understanding, explain the importance of clarity and simplicity in slide design. They also, for example, how, for example, non-verbal communication affects, like the gestures, posture, eye contact, because he was not able to maintain the eye contact also. So here they will learn about the eye contact, importance of eye contact, and they have to adapt to the different audiences, like for example, interpret the cues also, like body language, facial expression. And then comes to the application phase. So in the application phase, they have to, for example, have the pace, confident body language, effective voice modulation. As his slides were, for example, there were more text. So we are going to tell them that they have to give their, for example, presentation in short bullet points, and they have to minimize, keep less this content on the slides. So they can use, for example, pictures, image, and sometimes storytelling and analogs to communicate the complex ideas. And then comes to analyzing how they draw connection among the ideas, like analyzing sample presentation to viewpoint flaws in the flow. The objective is they should be able to analyze and how to present in front of the audience. Evaluate, justify a stand or decision. They have to evaluate their own and others' presentations, or the presentation they were doing earlier, and how they have improved over time. They should be able to evaluate that. And after that, the next step comes creating. So there has to be a lot of difference. Now they should be able, the audience or the people whom we have trained, they should be able to create the best presentation. So that comes the final stage, that they should be able to create the best and improve their delivery methods, and then create the best presentation and present themselves. So that's the final phase of the Bloom's taxonomy, ma'am.
Wonderful. Um, any questions from anybody? What these learning objectives were, and any question from anybody about this presentation from Ashik Hussain? No questions? No thoughts? Nobody will ask, why, ma'am, did you not choose my presentation and the one that we sent? Nobody's going to ask that question. Yes, Gaurav.
Avinash here. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Ma'am, I just wanted to know one thing. So, with every case, would it be necessary for us to use all the 6 levels and justify those 6 levels? Or
Again, it
depend?
depends upon the situation and the context, you know. So if, for example, you are going to teach how to use an Excel spreadsheet, a
Yeah.
very, very basic level, you know, school level children, maybe, you know, 10th standard, 12th standard, if you're going to train there, then
Mhm.
you may not want to go into the more advanced level.
Mm,
You just
right.
need to remember and apply. And so again, it depends on the context. In this situation, it's a behavioral skill,
Yeah.
not just knowledge. So behavioral skill, there's a concept and there's an application, there's a practice and there's a confidence that he has to develop. Because of a behavioral skill, I think it was important to have objectives all the way. As long as you do your own thinking
Yeah.
and you understand what level of the Bloom's taxonomy you want to train on,
Mhm.
that is what is more important. Yeah, any other question? I saw somebody's hand raised and then they took
Yeah.
it down.
Hello, ma'am. Avinash here.
Yes,
So
sir.
I'm from group 6. So I think it was my mistake personally, because we had the something similar structured to send it to you as our assignment. But what we understood is we have to send the learning object. We have to create as an L&D team of Zentech or something. We have to prepare the learning objective based on the instruction that was given. So we only sent the objective part of it. So my bad.
So this is the submission from group 6. No, it's only the objectives that we wanted. We didn't want anything more than the objectives. I read this quite in detail and I saw what was missing to me in this was, you know, it was very general, you know, when this is group 6. So if
Yes,
I'm going to ask you, you've done a good job, but if you want my real feedback,
of course, ma'am.
post training, employees will be able to effectively demonstrate essential presentation skills. That is a big objective, but how would you achieve that? What are the sub objectives under that? What is it you want him to apply? What is it that you want him to learn? What is it that you want, you know? So, some more detailing. This is, yes, we want, that is the overall need of a presentation skills program, but what is the specific to this context? So, so this is why I give this figure. I did not choose this particular presentation from your group.
Ma'am, I think I might have come across wrong again, because I was not asking why ours was not chosen. We understood that was a more comprehensive thing which group number 1 did. I'm sorry, group two did. I was just I was just apologizing because we didn't understand properly the objective. So now we have had a clear idea that where we went wrong. Thank
Now
you.
you
Thank you.
understand.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm going to take permission from group number 2 to send this their training, their learning objectives as per Bloom's taxonomy out to everybody, so that they get an idea as to what the perfect or what a good understanding is. Now, having
Ma'am,
said, yes, yes, please.
so ma'am, I'll just keep it short on just one thing I need to ask. In the last session, we discussed about this ABCD model as well, in order to have properly pinned down the objectives based on the audience behavior and other aspects as well. So may I know, ma'am, how exactly are we connecting Bloom's taxonomy with the ABCD model, or there are two different ways to calculate the objectives?
Actually, there are three aspects. If you go by what we learned, that there are three aspects. There needs to be a cognitive element, which is knowledge element. There needs to be a skill element. So there is some, you know, skill that he's learning. So there was elements of giving feedback from the peers, feedback and developing slides, designing. These are skills that you want to transmit. And then there's a belief. In case of Rajesh, this case that we've written, his confidence is the belief. You want to build his confidence. You want him to get opportunity to practice, for him to get valid feedback and to have some way of managing his nerves and his confidence. So that is the reason I chose this. So first is the levels of the Bloom's taxonomy. Second is all three levels, the psychomotor, the uh, affective and the cognitive elements have to be kept in mind. And the third is also the ABCD. So all these have to be kept in mind. And when you write the learning objectives, you will not write psychomotor objectives and affective objectives or cognitive objectives. You may not write, A, B, C, D audience, but you will write the objectives keeping in mind all of this, right? I hope that
Should be a
answers.
mix. It should be a mix of all this, right? That you are trying to say based on the situation only. Correct, ma'am?
So the final learning objectives you write have to take into account all the heart, head, and hands, as well as all the levels of the Bloom's taxonomy, as well as the audience and the ABCD analysis.
Got it.
That is the reason why Group 2 was chosen, because I could see that they've represented all of that in there. Having said that,
Absolutely.
I will simply also say that the learning objectives written have too much detail. If I had another half an hour or so to analyze this, I would have asked you to really sort these out, combine some of them, because there is some overlaps between one and another objective. And the final learning objectives that would come would be maximum 5 or 6 learning objectives, which would be very clear and which would be what we call mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. There's a term we have in academics, and we call it MECE, mutually exclusive. And there is no overlap between each. They're exclusive individually and collectively exhaustive, which means put together they represent everything that requires to be represented.
Ma'am,
Yes.
follow me here. I have a question. I'm having a little bit of confusion here. Group 4.
Yes.
In Rajesh's case, the learning need was that he should be able to effectively communicate.
Yeah, his presentation skills.
Yeah, in the
He's
presentation.
technically very sound, but his presentation comes across.
And he was lacking some communication skills as well in terms of behavior and all. My question is, ma'am, that in the apply stage of Bloom's taxonomy, the learning objective is met. Then why we are analyzing? Going for the next steps like analyze, evaluate, or create. And I mean, ma'am, in create, isn't it that creating a new module entirely or something like that that denotes create and not just creating a new presentation?
Yeah, he should be able to create, the right kind of presentation. What presentation he's making is not the best one. He should be able to create the best one. He should be able to create based upon the learning that he's achieved during the training program. He should be able to create the right kind of slides, the right kind of content, the right kind of flow, as well as be confident in his delivery. Yeah, at least have a way to remind himself to be confident.
Yeah, but that comes in the apply part, right, ma'am?
Yeah. So what's your question then?
My question is that when we are doing it practically, and if somebody is asking me to help Rajesh and employees like him to improve his skills, as it is mentioned in this case study. So in the apply stage, the objective is met. Then why we are proceeding beyond that?
No, the objective is not fully met in the apply. In the apply, you give him the knowledge and get him to apply. Then you have to also get him to be able to to look at his own presentation in a critical way, which means analysis. Okay, then you've got to say, okay, now the presentation I made is the one that I stand by. So there's evaluation. And then he should be able to create a presentation based on all the knowledge that we have given him and be able to deliver it based on all the inputs that he has had. So if you try to see it from just up to apply, learn and apply, that is not enough. That is not enough for him. Right? I'd like to move on, folks, to the extent possible. I hope, Polomi, your question is addressed. If not, then
yes.
PM me separately and I can address your question.
Yeah, sure, ma'am. Thank you.
We've got a lot of content to deliver and it's already 20 minutes gone. It was supposed to be 3 minutes show, but it's gone on for 20 minutes. So let me rush through whatever I can. Today we are going to talk about, now that we've got these learning objectives. We've got Rajesh's learning objectives in place and the training program's learning objectives in place. How do I create content that meets those objectives? So very often you will find the objectives are saying one thing, but the content is saying somebody is doing something else. There's no alignment between what is the content and what is the objective. In the last module, we tried to align the learning objectives with the actual training need. And in this module, we're going to say, now let's align the content with the learning objectives. So it's all about content structuring and storyboarding. Storyboarding is a term that is borrowed from the film industry. When they write a film, they tell the storyboard. It's like, so that is borrowed from them. But storyboarding means, how do I really create the narrative of my training program? So these are our learning objectives for today, and I've tried to look at what we can do. This is the session outline for module 7. Like, as I said, that there are 14 subsections here, so there's a lot of, this is one of the most content heavy modules. So I'm going to try and, I'm looking for some volunteers. Anybody who can give a volunteer? Anybody who can volunteer? One person volunteer. Gaurav, okay. Gaurav, I'm going to show you. Gaurav, turn on your mic. Your mic is on, Gaurav?
Yes.
I'm going to show you some alphabets. We
Okay.
call these nonsense syllables in psychology. So I'm going to show you these alphabets and I want you to repeat them. I'm going to show you for exactly 10 seconds. Okay. So try and memorize and repeat. Right? Your time starts now. Okay, can you repeat, Gaurav?
Yeah, so it was Zami, PTO, BAF, Ju, Zlo. That is what I could capture.
Okay. So to what extent was it correct?
So Zach, B, PTO, then D was missing.
All right. So my point is made. When one of the things is, this is just content. It's got no organization. It's got no chunking. It's got no storyline. It's got nothing. Remembering it is very difficult. So for people to remember what you did, you adopted your own methodology. You said Zach and Mip and Todd and Baff and Jux. You tried to do what in your mind? You were chunking the content. You were chunking the content. So this is the concept of chunking. When you chunk the content, you put it into bundles and it becomes easier to remember. In psychology, we say there's a short-term memory and there's a long-term memory. And a short-term memory is when you remember something, and if you don't chunk it, it gets forgotten. But if you chunk it, the chances of it getting transferred to a long-term memory is more. So it helps in retention. And then when you put a sound to it, you said Zach and Mip and Todd. When you said that, it improves your understanding also. It increases your engagement when you're chunking it. So when you chunked it in your mind, you were able to engage better. And it also helps you to remember and retrieve it the next time. Okay, can I take one more volunteer, please? Anybody who wants to volunteer first? Fastest finger first. Avinash. Okay, Avinash. I'm going to show you the same thing here and try and remember. 10 seconds you're going to have. Okay, Avinash.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you repeat?
Zach, Mop, Jiff. Or I was trying to make it into a word so that I can remember more quite often.
Okay.
These are 4 or 5. That is into 3, around 15 letters. I remember first 15 letters.
Okay. After Zach, Mop, Miff, what happens?
I forgot now.
He was not able to transfer. He did the same thing that Gaurav did. He was chunking it, making it into words, trying to memorize, but it did not get transferred to the long-term memory. It stayed in short-term memory, few seconds only, and that's it.
Yes,
all right. So this is what I did here. I actually did the chunking, right? Now, one more volunteer is needed again. One last volunteer. Jyoti. Okay, Jyoti.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to show you the same thing again, but in a different format.
Okay.
Okay, can you repeat?
Jack Smith Toad person. I only remember this much.
Okay.
Again, it was not making any sense.
Okay, so sometimes learners have different kinds of difficulties. Anybody else can repeat what
Yes,
they said?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
This one,
please.
ma'am. It was Jack, Mip, Todd, Bev, Jux, and Lord, Kir, San, Nav. Only this, ma'am, I can remember, ma'am.
Okay, you got it right up to 3 lines.
Okay.
What I've done is I've chunked the content even more. I made it even more chunky. So whenever the first thing about training is how do I organize my matter? When I'm designing a training program or an instruction design program, how do I create my session content? Now, a presentation skills program is spread over, say, 2 days. 2 days program or 1 day program on presentation skills. How do I make, there will be 4 sessions, there may be 6 sessions in that. And what do I put in the first session and the second session and the third session? And even if I've got my first session, I'm going to say elements of good presentation, PowerPoint. What should a good PowerPoint look like? Even that, how do I make the content? So the chunking and the organizing of the content makes it easier for the person to remember. So the program that is good and well executed will have good organization of matter. And one of the, if you see training programs that are done in America, designed in America, their content organization is fabulous. They've got some skill there. They're able to put the content in the right manner with the right chunking and with the right ways to remember. So some strategies for identifying for good chunking is when you identify the core concept. So if I'm saying PowerPoints, developing a PowerPoint, what's the core concept? There's a slide, there is a header, there is bullet points, there is images, there's visuals. So when I'm saying making a good PowerPoint, what's the core concept? These are the core concepts. Then when I'm saying making a presentation, you'll say eye contact, body posture, voice modulation, speed and pace. These are also core concepts. So look at what are the core concepts you want to communicate in every chunk and group all the related information together. So when I'm talking about body language, I speak about everything about body language. When I'm speaking of voice modulation, I speak everything about voice modulation. When I'm talking of making a good PowerPoint, we cover everything about good PowerPoint. So you group them together. You use headings and subheadings. The more headings and subheadings you use, the better it is. The structure is easier to assimilate by the learner. And incorporating limiting chunk size, sequencing chunks put it logically. If I'm doing a 2-day training program on presentation skills, I'll not begin with how to make a good PowerPoint slide. No, I'll begin with something else. Somewhere in the middle will come how to make a good PowerPoint slide. So you sequence it logically, you have to analyze and sequence it logically. You have to apply the ADDIE model. Remember you've done the ADDIE model with Dr. Rahul Bose. And then you encourage active learning through activities. That's now, you've got a whole section on experiential learning and so how would you create experiences and activities? Because when people have an experience or an activity, they tend to learn more. If you tell them everything, they'll know what the right things are, but they may not be able to do the right things. But when they have an activity, okay, let's make a PowerPoint presentation, or let's make an instruction design matrix, or let's write the learning objectives. When you give them an activity, then things get learned better. and you provide summaries and recaps to keep recording. Now, if I go back to my nonsense syllables here, and I give you a chance to read it, remember, the more you rehearse, the more you repeat, the more it gets transferred into your long-term memory. So I give you a chance to rehearse this 2-3 times, you'll be able to remember it. So give people an opportunity to recap and to reinforce their memory, and nothing wrong with repeating yourself, provided you are not repeating yourself for the sake of repeating, but you're repeating yourself so that the other party can understand and it gets embedded in their long-term memory. So some strategies. Then you have to analyze the content. This is something like your ADDIE model. Analyze whatever is the content, then you test it, seek feedback from other people, get a subject matter expert. If you're not a subject matter expert, get a subject matter expert, show it to your stakeholders and say, this is how I'm organizing it. If I'm like a professional trainer, I work with companies and clients, I always show them what I call an instruction design matrix. I'm saying, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how the flow is going to be. And then they participate in that and they say, this will work and this will not work for us. And we modify and we come to a final. So you seek feedback. Use technology. Nowadays, lots of technology, including AI. A lot of AI is available for you to develop content. And monitor learner progress. Are people really learning? Take stock and say, hey guys, any questions? Or hey, can you just repeat what I said? Or find a way to take a small quiz at the end of it. Stay flexible and open to adjust. So concept of chunking and organizing matter is understood. How do we organize matter? I will learn to apply this in the homework I will give you this week. Then comes something, this is a terminology which is American. It's called scaffolding. We don't, as a trainer, and I go to clients, I don't use the word scaffolding, but I do use the word as to how we will provide support. How will we provide support to our learners in the whole learning process? So scaffolding is the same thing. Like you will see in the image, here's somebody has to learn and get there, but when you have a scaffolding, you have a supporting structure that helps you get there. And if you're developing instruction design for e-learning or self-directed learning modules, then definitely you need to provide a lot of support structures. Sometimes the e-learning is what we call asynchronous. There's a cohort, all done in one batch. And when it's done in one batch, the people in the batch, like for example, this diploma program, the people in the batch tend to support one another. We provide you with groups, and the groups will tend to support one another. The faculty will support. That's all called support structure. We'll give you a discussion room. You get into the discussion room, discuss something. That all supports your learning. Sometimes the learning design that you're creating, the instruction design you're creating, is what we call asynchronous. So there's some e-learning module like Coursera. I will go and enroll and I will learn at my own pace and decide at my own pace. There's no support from any cohort or any batchmates or anything. So when that happens, you need to provide with some scaffolding, some support structure that will precipitate, that will provide the learner that he's not alone in their learning. They're not alone. There's something that is provided to them. So, so you create supporting structures and you incorporate multimedia. Some of the things that you do is you model behavior. So you give them an example of what is the perfect situation. So I gave the example today of how group number 2 written very well their learning objectives. Then you prompt them, find a way to prompt. If they're stuck, they're not able to come up with the answer, prompting. Then chunking. Some resources, okay, here you can do additional reading if you want. Here you will get a stepwise approach. Like I gave you last time some links. I said you can get a stepwise approach, how to develop learning objectives from Bloom's taxonomy. So I gave you a very, very clear, so that's all called scaffolding. And then you also give them feedback. So when group number 4 said, what is it that we could have done better, we provided you with feedback saying that this is what you could have done. So when you have all these, It makes the learner feel supported, right? So in group number 2, their learning objectives, they've got built in a lot of support. How we'll give them tips and tricks to handle nervousness when it happens. How we will give them feedback from themselves, from other people in their group, and how will they be able to critically analyze other people's presentations. So these are all forms of scaffolding. Yes, Sudhir, can I have your question, please?
Just I wanted to know about modeling. That means we have to present some model, some case, some live thing. Is it like that?
No, some role models. So, for example, if you're doing a presentation skills program, and you can say, okay, here is an ideal presentation. Maybe you can show them a short video. Or maybe you can say, I'm going to give an ideal presentation and you look at how I am giving it. So you're creating a role model. In other things, like if I'm teaching negotiation skills, I will do a role play. And I will say, okay, here is the role play and we'll do some negotiation. And then, the participants may not do it perfectly. Then I will step in. I'll say, okay, now I'm going to step in and show you how the good role play is done. So some role model is what we are talking about. I hope that's clear, dear.
Yeah. Okay.
Pratima, yes?
Yeah. Can you give some examples on prompting also?
Prompting is like if you're especially developing e-learning modules, it'll be like there's a quiz that comes in, and the person is stuck, not able to figure out. Then a little prompter comes in and says, try thinking this way or try thinking that way. You don't give them the answer in the prompting, but you give them some hints in the learning process. Just give them a hint.
Yeah.
Yes, Gaurav?
Okay, ma'am, I'll not take much time. So while discussing chunking, you said you've been using a template that has worked well for while you were approaching clients. So is there a fixed template that has worked all the time for you, or probably?
Yeah, I've got my own. I'm going to share it at the end of the session. So just
thank you.
Okay. So suppose the content is very heavy. You're training somebody to, tutoring somebody to give their board exams. That's the worst case scenario. Maximum cognitive load is there. They have to ratify, they have to memorize, they have to learn, apply everything. Suppose you are teaching somebody something that's very content heavy. Then how you can utilize scaffolding? There are certain things, and this is all given in your book, in your course material. So I'm not going to read this. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Pratima, your hand is still up, so if you don't mind, yeah. Then there is something called Vygotsky zone or proximal development. Now, these a lot of times people like to use special jargons. What is a zone of proximal development? It's simply how easy is it for the student or for the learner. And a lot of instruction design comes from the world of education rather than training. So if something is very easy, and person is in the comfort zone, yeah, this is easy. And sometimes it is, I can do this, but I need little help. And sometimes things are very hard to do. So you need to analyze, am I giving something that is too easy for people? Am I giving them little stretch? Or am I making things too hard for them? Right? So sometimes people will talk about Bloom's taxonomy and make it sound very hard, and students get frustrated. You talked about Bloom's taxonomy, I didn't understand it. So when you know that this Bloom's taxonomy is something that's hard to understand, you spend more time simplifying, explaining, and making it easier for the person. So you look at the difficulty level of the course, of the content that you are training in, and how difficult it is to understand, and then modulate your learning accordingly, your content accordingly. So it's important to understand. If something is too difficult, then how will you explain it simply? If something is too easy, then how will you make it a little bit more challenging for the person? So this is something about how the zone of proximal development can help you decide what kind of scaffolding you want to build. So the more difficult requires more support, the less difficult requires less support. simply put. So this is also from your book, that there is some theory of, so this is similar to your zone of proximal development, something that is can do alone, something can do with some help, and something that is out of reach. So you need to find things more in the zone of proximal development, which is things that can be done with help. So finding what is that ZPT, we don't know. We have to find, that's the limitation. What's the expertise that is required for scaling? What are the motivation of the people? People will get put off if it's too much content and too much theory, not enough application. And sometimes there's over-reliance on the teacher to be the source of all the knowledge. And that also is a limitation, because the teacher is not the only source of knowledge. There are many sources of knowledge. So something about how do we implement scaffolding and learning in the flow of work. There is some very simple tips over here. I'd like you to read, and if you have any questions, you can WhatsApp me or you can email me anytime. The other thing with scaffolding is, the more scaffolding you provide, the more crutches you create, and the more crippled the learner becomes. So everything is coming to the teacher for learning. No, you have to learn when to fade out the scaffolding, or when to let go and say, now you go figure it out on your own. You don't give your students fish, you teach them how to fish. There's a very famous saying. Some benefits of scaffolding are mentioned, and I'm going to skip that because it's all very common sense. It's in your comfort zone. It's not in your zone of proximal development. Okay, now how do we design learning content? I've got very little time left, so I'm going to skip through as much as possible. We already come to the context analysis. That's your training need analysis. And in case I gave you the case study of Rajesh. We determine the learning objectives. We've given that for homework. And after that, we have to look at content for each of those learning objectives. So group number 2 has got a huge amount of learning objectives. How do we create content for each of those learning objectives? There is some conceptual knowledge, which they call declarative knowledge. There's some procedural knowledge. How do we do it? So some knowledge about what is a good presentation. Second is, how do we make a good presentation? And then situated knowledge, when to make a good presentation and how best to deal with the issues as they come up in the actual situation, right? So this is all from your course material. And we find that if I give them only declarative knowledge, is the most basic, just the knowledge. What makes a good PowerPoint presentation? Okay, just the knowledge. But how to make a good PowerPoint presentation, give them an opportunity to practice and learn and do it. And then also to apply that in the right situation. So what we do is we look at looking at what knowledge, you look at the group number 2, all their learning objectives. So what is the declarative knowledge that's required there? Content. What is the procedural knowledge that's required there? What is the situational knowledge that's required there? And then we start creating a lesson plan. We create a lesson plan or a session-wise plan, or we create a session flow. This comes only from your analysis, your ability to be logical and intuitive, and also to understand what will work and what will not work. It comes with experience, it comes with learning, what is a good content flow, and how to subdivide your content into lessons or into sessions. Here it's called lessons, but we call them sessions in training. School and college, we call them lessons. In training, we call them sessions or modules. So how do we chunk it into different modules? Some lesson 1 will say, okay, that learners can identify something here. Lesson 2, they will hold weekly one-on-ones with direct reports. Lesson 3, they will actually, it comes back to declarative knowledge. And then lesson 4, lesson 5. So same way, you make a lesson plan. Then you do something called storyboarding of content. This comes from the world of movies, where you actually create a storyboard. It's like a comic strip. And here's an example of a storyboard over here that tells you how the story is going. So this helps to build a narrative in your program. So visualize the training design. How will it look? Session 1 onwards, how will it look? And then, so for example, session 1, 2, 3, and then finally you create an outcome that goes, the flow goes well, and the narrative and the story goes well. Otherwise, if you say, I'm going to begin my presentation skills training with how to make a good PowerPoint slide, you're putting the cart before the horse. That comes later. What comes first is what is a good presentation. And so some examples of storyboarding in Word, these are all given in your book. In PowerPoint, you can create, if you have any question on this, you can, in your storyboarding, what happens is many times people who are instruction designers, they're not the trainers. Very often the course is designed by somebody and is delivered by somebody else. So if that is the case in your case, then the instruction designers will also create slide templates and presentation decks, which are then given to the trainer to deliver. So that also, in our term, we don't say the word prototype, we call it slide template. So these are all tricks and terms of the trade, jargons of the trade. So in India, there is, I have it in my cupboard, there's something like this. This is called a cover. It's called a cover, and it tells you the story of maybe the Mahabharata. This is from the traditional times. You go to a temple, you will have the temple carvings that's telling you the story from the Mahabharata and from the Ramayana. That's actual storyboarding. And the content will overflow based on that. So I just thought I will present to you this. Some steps on how to create a learning storyboard. Assess your needs, decide on the approach, gather organization, all these. There is something called CRAP, contrast, alignment, repetition, proximity. There are some tips on creating learning courses. I want to show you instruction design, something I do with almost all my programs, especially when the client is asking to participate in the designing process. So I have, for example, this is a training I did for a company on negotiation skills. They wanted to get involved in the training program, design and all. So we called it negotiation skills workshop. So we wrote the learning objectives here. You can see the learning objectives. And then we decided session wise, or we just said sometime for 15 minutes, we will have an introduction. And this will draw the link between the context and the program. So why are we doing this negotiation skills program? What's the overall purpose? How will you use this when you go back to your workplace? What would be, so this will come from the senior person in the organization in the form of a speech. And the takeaway is that the participant gets drawn into the program and connects with the context. It's a warm-up. And the comments are, senior person will have to be identified. This is what I call an ID matrix. ID matrix, instruction design matrix. And this is an actual one I've done for a client. Then second session in 15 minutes, we'll do an icebreaker. And the icebreaker should be relevant to the workshop objectives. Maybe a physical exercise, getting to know each other, some props will be needed. Then we do the needs analysis. 15 minutes will go in doing a negotiation skills need analysis, which means what are my strong points, what are my weak points when it comes to negotiating. Am I good at time management? Am I good at holding my ground, or I tend to bulldoze my way when we are negotiating? So it helps people understand what their personal learning objectives are. So this is something that we plan. So session, timing, title, objectives, session-wise objectives. what's the content we will have, what's the methodology we will adopt, what are the takeaways for each participant, what's the skill that is developed, and some comments from my side that is required. Session 4 will be a role play number 1. And this will be in a fishbowl format. And this will give us an initial list of do's and don'ts for negotiation. And then session 5 will be actual presentation from my side, okay, which will give them the theory, concept, and all the tips that I want to give them content-wise, cognitive learning here. So this will be an interactive lecture. And then session 6 will be 30 minutes, understand how to build trust. Then there will be a film on negotiation skills. Then there'll be a second role play. Then there'll be a team negotiation exercise. Then there'll be a role play round robin. This is something that I do very frequently. And then there will be a post-workshop debrief. What did I learn? What is my individual takeaway? How will I convert it into an action plan? And what will be my roadmap for implementation? So this is how I design. I call this an ID matrix. A lot of trainers that I know, they develop ID matrix. And I recently did a workshop on interviewing skills for Maruti Udyog. And at that time also I developed an ID matrix, and they changed a lot of things over there, which I was a little resistant to, because I know that what changes they were recommending were not, proper. So there was a lot of back and forth that we did on how the, ID matrix. So this is serves as a basis for discussion. Yes, Gaurav.
Ma'am, do you also have a matrix for developing a objective which takes you to this particular matrix? Maybe you don't show it to the client, but we do it for ourselves, and then
I do it for myself. I do it for myself. Sometimes I just do it on a piece of paper,
wherein you define the blooms, what level of objectives you want to create, and then you further detail it into this matrix.
Sometimes I just do it on a paper if there is no client interaction.
Mm-hmm.
I put it on a paper and I will just write it down, and I will think through, and I will keep modifying it. And I like to work on a pen and paper, so I will do it on pen and paper. Then I will go and develop a course outline.
But has there ever been a situation that you had to present that objective also to the client and
So that's when I put it in writing like this.
Okay. So before ID matrix,
like I did for Maruti, they wanted to see everything that I'm going to show, including my PowerPoint presentations, including my role plays. They wanted to vet everything before I actually started the program.
But that comes after this. So you present this first, and then you start working on the prototype.
Present this first, we agree on this. Then once this is agreed to, then we start developing the content.
The content, okay. Thank you.
Sometimes I already have, I have a database of different role plays. I will use for different subjects, like performance appraisal role plays, which I have written, some case studies which I have written. So I will use my content, but I will simply tell them is a role play number 1 will come here. And then the role play number 2 will come, and then there will be a team role play. And then there will be a, role play round robin. So I will tell them if they want to see the role play, I'll give it to them, but usually I don't do that. Otherwise,
but that will be a part of the design document, I believe. So
So I have a database of exercises I have written and developed, which then I will draw upon when I'm deciding the content. I already have some presentations on negotiation skills. I already have a film that I like to show when I'm doing negotiation skills. So sometimes you look at what resources you have and then create the ID matrix. Sometimes you look at the ID matrix that is.
And what is your go-to place for these resources? I mean, I'm sure you would have developed it over years.
Since before computers also. So I've been collecting resources for years. So when I started my career in 1981, there was no computer, nothing. There was no even OHPs, the slide transparencies. We used to just go with cards and we would chalk and talk literally. There were no whiteboards also, so it was actual physical chalk and talk. Now, of course, there are a lot of e-resources, so you can even go to, Chat GPT and things like that.
Sure, thank you.
So, So I've showed you something from my work, how I do. If you want to know more and you need some handholding, I'm ready to do that. I want to now spend the next 3 minutes. We've got to assign you homework again. Yes, homework again. This time I want to give you homework to create the same case study, Rajesh. And so no change in the case study. But now we are going to convert these learning objectives into a storyboard for instruction design. So I'm going to distribute group number 2's learning objectives. Got it? Everybody? The same groups, group 1 to 10, those who didn't participate can still participate. Doesn't mean if you didn't submit the first time, you can't submit the second time, right? So,
Hi, ma'am. Sorry to interrupt.
yeah.
Yeah, this is Rizwan here, ma'am. Actually, I was not able to attend the last session, so I was not in any group. I discussed this with Gurvinder sir, but I don't know, I didn't get any reply for that.
So you ask any of your friends if you can join them, right? Anybody who was not present
Yes,
last time?
yes, ma'am. Same. I missed the last session,
Yeah.
and just because of that, I'm not in any group.
Yeah. So ask any of your friends and we join any of their groups.
Because
But
if you see, ma'am, there is like around 40 to 50 people were there who didn't join in the last session, ma'am. So I discussed
there
it
were
with.
10 groups of 9 each. There were more than 90 people present in the last
Okay.
session. So if there's
Okay.
anybody here who is not a part of a group, please ask any of your friends if you can join, and please join that group and exchange their WhatsApp numbers. And so take care of yourself. Don't ask me to ask you to assign you to a group. I can't do that now. So now you have to take Rajesh case study. You have to take group number 2 learning objectives, which I'm sending to you. And you have to now make this into you want to make an ID matrix like I showed you, or you want to make a storyboard in a different way, please feel free. At the end of it, I want you to look at learning outcomes, breaking these down into learning objectives, into smaller units, developing a flow, developing an instruction sequence. What will you do in session 1, 2, 3, 4? And you decide it should be a one-day program. Let me just put it, designing a one-day program. Sorry. So for one-day program on presentation skills, right? That's what you have to do. You have to create a one-day program on presentation skills to meet the same learning objectives and the same case study of Rajesh, right? Same group set last time. Use the learning objectives from group number 2. You decide on a date and time to meet, which everyone in your group can attend. WhatsApp me only if you're in dire need and total distress, and send your written storyboard along with group member names and group number, which was missing in many cases. I had to ask for that. Deadline Saturday, 7th June, 12 noon. Some people sent it last night. Polomi's group sent it to me late night last night. I woke up early in the morning to read and study what she sent. But try and send it by 12 noon, because then I get chance to evaluate them properly. And best submission will get 5 minutes in the class on 8th of June to present their storyboard. Agreed?
Yeah, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay, one person has agreed.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. So this is the good homework. I want to see everyone designing a one-day program on presentation skills based on today's input. How will you chunk your content? How will you make a storyboard? And how will you meet the learning objectives? It has to match and meet the learning objectives. If the objective is not met, then your content is pointless. All right. 1 minute, any questions? Last minute questions? Fantastic. No
Saturday
questions.
EOT, ma'am.
Huh?
Your TAT for this same.
I didn't understand what you said.
Ma'am, TAT is
Submission.
still the same. Like for like we have the previous. What's the submission date?
Submission date is 7th of June, 12 noon.
7th of June. Got it. Got it.
Email. All right. You see it's here. It's written here. All right. Okay. Next session, we will be doing how to evaluate the training effectiveness. So your program, if you can go and conduct it, how will you evaluate it? All right. See you next time. Have a great day. Have a great
Thank
week.
you.
Have a wonderful Sunday.
Ma'am, can we get the ID metrics, ma'am? A copy?
That's my private one. I can delete some of the content and send you.
Yeah, that is also helpful, ma'am. Like
Intellectual property.
an overview, a
I can
sample.
I can show it over here and you can take a screenshot, right?
Yeah, sure.
I don't want to send it out.
Yeah,
You can take a
I
screenshot.
understand. Thank
Okay,
you.
bye everybody. Have a nice
Thank
day.
you.
Have a nice day. All the best.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
I got the screenshot. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. See you next week.